You sound like Tony Stewart.
Does that mean you're David
No,
Newton?
I'm Kyle Busch. I won.
Oh, okay.
Welcome into the Rowdy Studios. Tom Vandervoort with Stephen Levine talking about Richmond and another win for Kyle Busch in the spring race. Didn't look like he would get it until the very end.
Well, he did exactly what we said he had to do. He was listening, obviously. We said, look, Kyle Busch, you have not looked like a race winner. You have not looked like a championship threat all season long. You were out to lunch at Bristol. For you, Richmond, you better step up and be the Kyle Busch of old, and that's exactly what he did.
You know, I don't know if he was exactly the Kyle Busch of old because he was not a dominant race car, but he was good enough to stay in the top 5 for the whole evening, and circumstances unfolded in a way that was perfect for him. Let's start with the Carl Edwards penalty. The 3 fastest cars in my mind were Carl Edwards, Tony Stewart, and Jimmy Johnson. Well, 2 of those 3 drivers received penalties, and Kyle beat Tony Stewart out of the pits on the final stop. But let's talk about Carl Edwards' penalty. Penalized for jumping the restart. He was in second on the restart, took off a little too early. Tony looked like he spun his tires, and they put Carl to the back of the field.
Look, and whether or not Tony Stewart spun his tires is irrelevant. That doesn't give you, as the second guy in line, license to jump the restart just because the guy on the pole or the guy in the first position spins his tires. You still have to defer to him.
Well, that's the thing about it. There was some confusion on Carl's part.
As to who was
NASCAR
first.
official, according to Carl and his spotter, a NASCAR official told his spotter that Carl was in first, even though Carl was lined up in second, because no one in his right mind would have taken the outside on the restart.
Right, Carl thought, oh, well, they just put me in the wrong position.
He thought, well, gee, I'm the leader, but they let Tony have the choice. But now that we're coming to the green, I'm going to do all I can to get the best restart I can. So that's why he jumped the start. He thought he was the leader, and he needed to get the best start he could. Then you combine that with the fact that Tony either waited or spun his tires, and it looked horrible. And that's the thing about it that's frustrating from Carl's point of view is if that had gone off like a normal restart, the fact that he started a couple car lengths before wouldn't really have mattered.
And probably,
but the fact that he was in second and the fact that Tony didn't get going made it look so bad. They really had no choice.
Right. If you actually look at the replay, Carl is just a little bit early. If you look at the restart box, he's just to the outside of it. So it really wasn't that egregious, but it was
just circumstances.
In fact,
and it was
a foul.
The right call. I understand his frustration. I think the only thing maybe you could question is say if there was legitimate confusion about who was the leader, let's take another circuit around the track and make sure everyone's squared away before we get this thing going.
Yeah,
but I don't think NASCAR had a choice.
Once you go green, they're not going to do that. They're not going to bring the yellow back out. You know, I just don't see that happening.
No. Now, once you go green, right. I mean, they would have had to hold the restart, basically. Now, let's talk about Tony Stewart and his frustration, because this guy was waltzing away to a win when we got one of those cautions that we get sometimes. There's debris on the track, but the race fan doesn't really see it, and Tony was pretty frustrated after the race. There really wasn't much of an obstacle for anybody.
Well, you know, who's to say? NASCAR probably errs on the side of safety with this sort of debris type caution. If they see something that could fly into somebody's grill or could cut down a tire, they go ahead and they deal with it. Whether or not the reality is that it was a major impediment, you know, they're not dealing with the reality because they haven't gone out there and picked it up yet. They see the potential for a problem, and they act. And, you know, Tony Stewart has been called up to race control before and has had this conversation about debris cautions and, you know, kind of got spanked by NASCAR on this very topic.
Well, here's the other issue that I don't think anyone's raised, and I would like to raise, if I may.
No, please do.
The leader has a choice, inside or outside. Why not give everyone else the choice?
This is another one of your pet theories.
Listen,
your pet
if you
projects.
were Tony Stewart, if you were anybody on Saturday night and you watched all the restarts that we'd had up to that point, you would say to yourself, I would rather be behind the leader on the inside than to the outside of the leader on the outside, because the guys, at least the leader and probably the guy behind him, is going to get past me. Now, I think the second place guy should have a choice, and the third place guy should have the next choice, and the fourth place guy should have the next choice.
Under that scenario, you could end up with the 1 through 10 place drivers all on the inside,
Yes.
which means the 11th place driver lines up on the outside of the first place driver.
And that would only happen if the 1 through 10 decided they would prefer to be on the
but
inside.
the potential exists, and I just think that's too wacky.
So what?
It's too wacky.
It's the choice I have earned that choice by being ahead of you, so I'm going to choose the way I want it. Now, if I'm a third place guy and the first two guys choose the inside, I'm probably going to choose the outside because I want to be closer to the front. In very rare circumstances, you might have the first three guys on the inside or the outside, depending on which is the favored line. I just think it behooves, if I'm Tony Stewart and I've earned the second place on the racetrack and it's the final restart, and I know that I'd get an advantage restarting behind Kyle Busch, we're going to clear that guy on the outside, then I'm going to race him for the win. That's the way the race should end to me. No offense to Dale Jr., but he certainly wasn't the second best car.
Here's why that's never going to happen. If you think back to NASCAR's actions in revamping the point system, what was their goal?
Simplicity.
Simplification. Your scenario, which may be more fair on a certain level, is certainly not more simple. NASCAR could have gone more fair, in my estimation, with the point system, but they went for more simple. So they're not going to complicate the restart to the degree that you're asking them to complicate.
Well, it's already complicated enough because apparently the drivers don't know who the leader is. All right, for Stephen Levine, I'm Tom Vandervoort. That's our look at Richmond. We'll see you next time.